Hi guys, I'm Daphne.
Hi Daphne. Hi Daphne.
I am a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I struggle with control, self-worth, fear, depression, and I'm also a survivor of rape. Oh, and I'm addicted to Mickey Mouse for those that don't know. I came from a broken home where alcohol, parties, drugs, and fighting was the normal. My parents were never home often, and if they were, the night would normally end with cop cars and the ambulance. My mom was physically beaten more times than I can count. There were a few times that I didn't know she would even come home when she left in the ambulance. I don't remember a single day growing up when my mom and stepdad weren't drinking or at the bar. Due to the obsessive drinking, my siblings and I spent a lot of time with family members. I was molested by one of those family members at a very young age. And from that time, I learned to never trust men. I had seen my mom treated so bad. My dad was never around to protect me, and my innocence had been taken, with threats if I ever told anyone. I did get to go to my grandma's on some weekends, and that was when I learned about God. I would go with her to church. It was the highlight of my week. Before I was 7, I had accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. Everything changed on January 17th, 1996, when I was 14 years old. My grandma passed away. I felt cheated. She was the one person I always felt safe with. She was the most God-loving woman there ever was, and she was taken from me. I grew angry with God and eventually started to hate him. I now had no way to escape my house and my home environment that I was being raised in. I had no one to tell me that God would make it all better and that God loved me more than anyone else. I had no one who I felt would protect me. My biological father was too busy with his new wife and kids to care about me or what was going on with me. He was just as heavy a drinker as my mom was. When I was younger, I used to think I meant more to him than anyone. I was about 15 when I realized that something else was more important to him. My oldest brother was diagnosed with cancer shortly after my grandma died. I still to this day have mixed emotions about it. I was sad that he was sick and stuck in the hospital, angry that I had to take care of my younger siblings, but grateful that my mom had to clean up her act and help take care of him. She was still never home, but I learned to deal with it. Having my life revolve around caring for my siblings and going to and from school, losing my grandmother, my brother getting cancer, and all that before I was 16. I became a menace, didn't listen to anyone. I would lie and steal and do anything I could to get attention. I would become obsessed with anyone that would show me even a little bit of attention. I found the one guy that I thought I was in love with. I thought he was perfect, and my mom hated him, which made me like him even more. However, he turned out to be the monster that I dreamed of as a child. In November of 1997, at 16, I was raped and beaten, all for refusing to undress in front of him and his friends. They all did as they pleased that night, while I tried blocking out what was happening. How could this happen? I thought he loved me and cared for me. He should have protected me, not been the one to hurt me. I knew not to trust men, but I thought he was different. After that night, I stayed hidden and isolated. I refused to leave my house except to go to school, until he started looking for me there. I found out in March of 1998, on my 17th birthday, that I was pregnant. I had no idea what to do. Thing is, I had been so depressed that no one noticed any changes, not even myself. So by the time I found out, I was already 5 months along. Exactly 2 months to the day after many complications and doctors feeling that neither of us would survive, I delivered a healthy baby girl. The day I delivered my daughter was the day that I learned who my father was. He was contacted by the guy who raped me, which just so happened to be his drug dealer. He traded information for what he needed to get his fix. My dad, the one man on earth I thought would protect me no matter what, told this man where I was and that I had just had a baby. He started calling the hospital, and after many failed attempts to get any information, my dad called me and put him on the phone. I don't remember much besides handing the phone to my mom. I became depressed because every time I looked at her beautiful face, I would see him. I was then diagnosed with postpartum depression. I still continued school and learned very fast that it is not easy taking care of a baby and going to school. I tried dropping out more than once, but I had a teacher that refused to let me fall behind. If I missed school, he would bring my homework to my front door. Without him, I never would have finished high school. Shortly after I had my daughter, my mom moved us across town. We finally got rid of my stepdad, and I was starting to feel safe. My rapist was in jail. He could never have any contact with my daughter. I had been seeing a counselor that was helping to take away my fear, because every time I closed my eyes, I was back at that night in November. She always knew what I needed to hear, even when I didn't want to hear it. Through counseling, I learned that not all men were bad, and that I didn't need to be in fear of every guy that I encountered. I eventually came to find new friends. They would be lifelong friends that I still have today. I never had a reason to feel unsafe anymore. They all loved my daughter as if she was one of their own. I started going out with my mom a few times a month. I would always dance with the same guy every time I went because he was my mom's friend, and she trusted him, so I trusted him, and I was in public. I was starting to finally come out of my shell. I had no love for myself, even though I was healing, and felt the only way any man would love me is if I slept with him. After a few months of this, I met a guy that I would fall head over feet for. We soon found out we were pregnant, and we got married. Life was finally going good, and nothing could ruin it, or so I thought. I had been so blinded by love that I missed the signs that he was having affairs. Not one, but many. I became depressed again, felt as if I was no good. I found out that he had more children, all born while we were married. Something came over me, and I finally got the courage to leave. Within weeks, I met another man that I thought would be my forever. Well, again, I was wrong. He was an alcoholic and would drink nightly and get mad if I didn't drink with him. That was when I found my love for Captain Morgan. I knew when to stop, but it was still more than I should have had to begin with. I was wise to my childhood and would never drink if I knew I had to go pick up my kids or if I had to go home to them. I never wanted them to grow up the way I did. At this time, my depression was getting worse. I became angry, and at times I was the abuser. I won't make excuses, but I always had something inside me that told me if I didn't act first, then I would be the one that was hurt again. I became isolated and decided it was time to fix my life and be a great mom. Once again, no clue as to why it just hit me. I decided to take my kids and go live with my grandma, away from all the parties, the guys, and my friends. My kids and I were living in a one-bedroom together. I was unemployed and felt completely broken. My mom invited me out one night to cheer me up. We went dancing. My mom was the queen of line dancing. My mom came around the corner motioning for me to come to her quick. She didn't look worried, but I was still a little on edge. I came around the corner to find the guy that I had danced away many nights with in my teens. I married that man 1 year later. I never knew what marriage was supposed to be like. I never knew that one man could love one woman. Not only did my husband take on my kids, but he also took on my demons. He knew after our first few arguments that he should stay away from me. I would back into the farthest corner of the room, and I could see in his face that he was scared for me. He would give me space when I needed it, but would also remind me that he wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't all perfect. We did have a few bumps in the road. His family didn't like me very much, and they made that very clear. I was treated as if I was no good and never would be. We did separate a couple times, but always found our way back to each other within a few days or weeks. I was just being a brat, plain and simple. We decided in 2005 that it was time to leave Arizona and get away from all the negative things in our lives. My family, the bars, and my friends. I knew that not leaving would be the beginning of the end of us. So we moved to Missouri to be closer to his family. Things happened a year later. We had to move back to Arizona. 1 year after that, back to Missouri. This time I knew things would be different. I could feel it in my bones. My kids were striving in school. They were making lifelong friends. They were happy. One day my oldest asked me if she could go to church, and I agreed, but I stayed home. She would continue to go and would take her sister on occasion. I saw a light shining out of my girls every Sunday when they came home. One day my husband's cousin asked if I would join her at church. I denied her offer, but she kept asking. After nearly a month, I decided to go, just so she would stop pestering me. It was the first time I had gone to church since my grandma had passed in 1996. Nearly 11 years later, here I was, walking through the doors of a church. I could feel the anxiety creeping in. I kept telling myself that I could do this one time and done. I didn't need to be there. It was just a way to keep his cousin from asking me again. As I sat in the farthest seat back and the closest to the door, people kept smiling at me and welcoming me. I had nothing to say in return. I grinned and put my head down. Pastor Brian started preaching, and I kept staring at my hands. But his sermon that night was about healing. Little by little through the service, I felt my head rise, and I was listening to the words that he was saying. Right at the end, I was fully engulfed in the words being spoken. My head was at attention, and he made eye contact with me. I didn't know that my face was a mess, and the tears were covering my entire face. My shirt was wet, my makeup was a mess. It was a full-out ugly cry. He looked me right in the eye and said, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding.
Yes.
Seek his will in all you do, and he will direct your path."
Amen.
Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Amen. This has been my life verse to this day. As he started to pray, I felt something. I immediately jumped from my seat, checked my kids out, ran to my car. After putting my kids to bed that night, I dug for 3 hours in boxes, trying to find my Bible that I had been given as a child. Once finding it, I opened it and started reading that verse over and over again. I then, for the first time in 11 years, felt what I can only describe as a weight being lifted off my shoulders. I knew then that it was God breaking up the hurt, fear, and pain that I had lived with the past 11 years.
Amen.
I started to pray and asked God to come into my life, to make me whole again, and to be my Lord and Savior. I cried and prayed and cried some more. We were regulars at Meadow Heights for nearly a year before having to return to Arizona. Life got busy upon our return, and I never could find a church that I enjoyed or that the kids liked. I knew God was around, but I also knew that I was still a sinner and that I needed to get right with God, and soon. The opportunity came for my husband to work in Durango. At first, the kids and I would stay in Arizona and just travel to see him. Something was pulling at me to find a place in Colorado, and soon. A friend who lived in Cortez called and told me about a house. I immediately loaded the kids and traveled to Cortez. Within 4 days, the deposit was paid, the lease was signed, and the kids and I were headed back to Arizona for 1 week to pack and complete the move. Once the move was complete, I went to a few churches around the area and tried them out. Nothing ever fit. It just didn't feel right. The kids all thought the same thing. A friend of my daughter told me to come to Rock Springs. He said he was positive I would love it, so we went. Walking through the doors the first time, I was greeted by Miss Clemens, then Elaine. They both had on this bright smile and wanted to know all about me, invited me to sit with them, and just made me feel so welcome. Then David walked on the stage. I felt that every word he was saying was directed right to me. It's like he knew my deepest, darkest secrets. I know we've all felt that way one time or another. As I left that day, the word home slipped from my lips. I knew it was God telling me that I was home. This is where I had been searching for. I came to find my forever family and the most amazing friends that I ever could have hoped for. I had a renewed relationship with Jesus, and I never want to let it slip away again.
Amen.
The first time I came to celebrate recovery was almost 4 years ago. I was here as a fill-in babysitter, and then I was asked to lead the kids in celebration place. Well, not asked, I was kind of voluntold. Best thing I've ever done. I did dig my heels in for some time about getting involved with CR, with anything more than the kids. I was fine. There was nothing wrong with me. I'm not like those people.
None of us are.
Well, God wasn't having that. He made a way for me to join a step study. I was out of excuses on why I couldn't do it. My schedule was clear and there was nothing else to do but go for it. And I'm so glad I finally did. I found lifelong friends in my stepsisters. They did have to hold me accountable to finish at the end. And I'm so grateful they did. I have found a place where I am meant to be, and my forever family that loves me for me.
Amen.
Even with all my hurts, habits, and hang-ups. I am now a completely new person. The hardest step for me was forgiveness. I never thought I would be able to move past being raped, or be able to forgive that person. But God has helped me to do that. I have also forgiven my mom. She was there when I needed her most. God has helped me release my fear of people and has opened me up to help those who have gone through something similar. I have tried to give God every aspect of my life, but we all know just how hard that is to do. I do know now that it wasn't my fault that certain things happened to me. I don't need to have a fear of people, and most importantly for me, not to judge anyone. Everyone is trying to heal from their own demons. My main goal in life now is to make sure every child in the world knows that Jesus is the Savior and Forgiver, and that He loves them no matter what. Thank you for letting me share.